back there? Good. Can you hear me all right? Turn the volume up a little more. Better than that?
Much better.
Good. It's probably me and this microphone.
Tilt it up so much, yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. Says, I'm David McDonald, the president of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. On behalf of the board of directors, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. The DNA's mission is to enhance the quality of life, of residential life in the historic landmark district, protect Savannah's unique downtown environment, and advocate public policies which support those objectives. Before we start tonight, I'd like to recognize some members in the audience. Obviously, our speaker, Mayor Johnson. Alderman Dietrich Leggett. And we have Alderman Nick Palumbo. As you can see from the crowd, we also have invited some from the Victorian Neighborhood Association. I think Nancy, are you here? Nancy May, Vice President of and the Starland District as well. They're here, I believe. So I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors. Each organization has been highlighted on the slides that you've seen here tonight. I also wanted to thank those supporting the Holiday Tour of Homes and Inns. You have seen those companies on the screen as well. So thanks to each of them. I'm going to get with Joyce and Donnie. You have some comments about the Holiday Tour of Homes that's coming up. And I know, Ms. Mary, you have to leave, so we'll get it done quickly. As part of the tour this year, we have the children's choir singing at several homes, Green Meldrum and
So, yes.
Harper Folks at certain times of the day.
Yes, so you do not need a ticket for this. The children's choirs, various elements, are performing at the Green Meldrum House starting at 11. They have been one of our grantees for many years, and we try to support them. So I encourage you, again, you don't need a ticket. Please just come out and give them an audience. They're adorable, they sound beautiful, and we just need to support the children doing wonderful things for us. Thank you.
Two quick updates before we get there. This Thursday, the Design District between on Whitaker Street between East Liberty or West Liberty and Taylor will be having a Christmas event open to everyone. So we invite you to go up there. That was the only thing I had. So tonight our guest speaker is Mayor Van Johnson. As you already know, the mayor was reelected with 77% of the vote. A tally which he carried in every polling precinct, I believe. The exact same numbers. Before we start, we're going to have a slightly different format tonight. I have received many questions for the mayor from members of the residents downtown and others, as well as board members, of which I will ask the mayor directly. I will ask those that if we call upon at the end, I will open it up for questions from the audience for the last 5 to 10 minutes. He is in a hurry tonight. He has another event to go to. But I'll ask if you're called upon, no long speeches, no commentary, just please ask a question. Thank you. No additional introduction, I will give you the mayor.
You hear me? Oh, there we go. All right, I thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you and the opportunity to share it. I appreciate the fact that I am reelected. Governing and then being in a campaign by yourself for a year and then with somebody else for 2 years has been really kind of challenging. But we found some really historic opportunities in this community, and so we are bewildered and certainly just gratified by 77% and then certainly carrying every single district, the 66 in this community. And so I'm honored by it, and again, just so thankful for it. More importantly, there were a group of individuals I served with who also were overwhelmingly elected in their districts, and some had multiple opponents. And so Alderman Dietrich Leggett from the 2nd District. Y'all clap for Alderman Leggett. And then Alderman Palumbo from the 4th District as well. And then many of you all may know of Marty Johnston, my deputy assistant. Y'all clap for her. She had the ride, so when I couldn't say bad things to other people, I just said it to her. And then she would say even worse stuff to me. So let me preface my comments by just saying a couple of things. First thing is that I understand that I'm subbing for, I guess y'all had somebody else and y'all. So I understand that, and so I accept that. But understand, so therefore I'm subbing, so I'm subbing. So y'all be nice to me. The second thing is that the comments that I'm expressing are mine. And they are mine from the perspective of not only now in my 20th year of elected service to the city, but certainly I represented directly this district for 12 years of downtown. Many of you might remember when it was in District 1. And so I represented it, so I kind of see the evolution of it. And now serving as mayor. So those are the context under which the comments that I'm presenting. We have the 139th administration, again, very proud that they'll all be coming back. Well, most of them are coming back. The ones I really want to come back are coming back. And so I'm excited about that. And then more importantly, you all ignored the childish and sophomore rhetoric that was being spewed and misinformation. I'm glad that Savannah was way smarter than that. Again, I'm just appreciative of that. So these are my comments. We're not going to fight, right? Just let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And so I'm going to be very general, although you will see that these are comments that you've heard from me in the past as it relates to it. It really just reflects my thoughts. And then David gave me some areas, and so I'll address some of those, and then we'll just use most of our time for nice questions. Or if you're going to be mean about it, just ask the mean question and just smile while you say it, okay? So let's start with the fact that we live in the greatest city in the world. Y'all don't agree? Well, I don't know. I chose Savannah. Although my father was born and raised here, and my grandmother and all of that, at some point I had a choice to choose Savannah. And I was in New York on Thanksgiving Day with my parents, and after a while, I'm like, I'm ready to come back to Savannah. So this is home. And coming to our Broughton Street and lighting the Christmas tree and seeing the celebrations, and it reminded me of just the reasons why I love Savannah. The same reasons we made it through COVID, the same reasons why we made it through demonstrations was because of the power of the people of Savannah. Now, that being said, a lot of people now find Savannah very, very interesting. People from all over the world, I will tell you there is not a place I go in the world that when I say that I'm the mayor of Savannah, they say, oh my gosh, what a beautiful city. And then they want to tell me for the next 30 minutes to half an hour about their favorite restaurant and their favorite place. And the people they know, do you know so-and-so? No, I don't know them. And so to that end, there are growing pains associated with that type of movement. There are people moving here from all over the world. And as I've said before, our challenge has to be that we maintain Savannah as being maintaining Savannah as the best place to live and not necessarily the best place to visit. Okay? I don't mind people being together. Don't stop. But the moment when Savannah becomes a better place to visit, that a better place to live, we have a problem. I've been very, very clear about that. For us, again, and I've said this before, you've heard it before, everybody wants to visit Disney World, nobody wants to live in Disney World, right? I mean, you want to go there and leave, but you don't want to hear it's a small world after all. So for us, it requires us to regularly recalibrate the relationship, and not just tourism, but just even business interests, because what makes Savannah so unique is that it all happens in the same space. And if you've been to other cities where you have a very clear downtown, you don't have people living there. And so when the downtown is over, you don't see people. But for us, it's all in one. So it's a need for us to calibrate. And so our challenge has been is to make sure that we do it in a way that makes absolute sense. In a way that recognizes the role that tourism and business plays, small businesses play in our community, but also recognizes that people have a right to be able to enjoy some semblance of livability. And so for me, that's really what it's really about. How do we reestablish that? How do we recreate that? So how do you do that? So it's a couple of things for me. The first thing is that, and this is citywide, is that we have to be able to create zones. We do not have, although we kind of know what an entertainment zone is. And there are very clear zones that you can tell by the zoning, you can tell by the businesses that are there, the types of businesses that operate there, where those zones are. And I think we have to establish them. And establish the activities that go on within those zones. And establish the times that activities go on in those zones. And for people who live specifically in those zones, for the most part, you knew what you were getting into when you moved into that zone. If you live on Broughton Street, sorry. Okay? Right? If you live on Bay Street, sorry, right? You understand what you got into when you got there. But then there are other places that are around or but or adjacent to that don't. You expect something else. So I think, what I propose and will be proposing in council ultimately is to be able to establish those zones and establish the activities that go on in those zones. And then let's talk about everything else in between that. Now, there is a tipping point when too much becomes too much. And so how do we have those conversations? And many of you all know, I've gained a propensity of dealing with issues head on. And so it is a mixture of things. So we have some things already in place. Many of you all were familiar with the, was it RTA? What was the study called? RHI study. We paid for it. I didn't really like it that much. It didn't really talk about things we didn't already know. And it didn't talk about livability. It just talked about businesses. And so that's an issue for me. And we have our Tourism Advisory Council, which has a very specific purpose, but it's not really what I envision this to be. And so my goal and my recommendation to council ultimately is that we're going to create, and again, I like task force, I like people working on stuff, and they'll create a livability task force with the specific purpose of making some very clear recommendations to council about activities that go on within residential areas. Now, it's a very specific role with a very specific time period, with a very specific sundown period. Either y'all work it out or we'll work it out for you. And what we find is when we do that, people work it out. People work it out. And it needs to be worked out in a way that makes sense. And so, and there are a variety of things. And I think for me, as the mayor of this city, everything has to be on the table. And I've heard about trolleys, I've heard about quadricycles, I've heard about horses, I've heard about dancing dogs, I've heard about walking tours, and I just think that, again, not only if they operate, but also how they operate, where they operate, and what circumstances they would operate under. Because again, we get to the point sometimes with too much is too much. And again, I think people with a very clear understanding that you can't have 4 trolleys in the city square at one time. I think that's a little unreasonable. Again, we can work those types of things out. And again, not only for downtown, but also citywide. We have Starling, we have places out on the south side. Again, we have these zones. I think we can address those zones. And so I hope to start that and jump on that relatively quickly. Because I think, kicking the can down the road doesn't really work. The other thing that I've spoken about is that we really don't have a 24-hour government in a very specific sense. Now, what do you mean by that, Bab? Well, that we have a government that operates, but really at night. Savannah is different. Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 6 than it is at nights and on weekends. It takes on a whole different feel. And unfortunately, and this has been experienced, that really after hours, it's really hard to find folks in charge. And I mean, we own that. And so my direction to the city manager is that we need people in charge. In New York, they hire what they call a nighttime mayor. But it's, we just have to have people in charge. That if we have rules, and people have gotten really good understanding what the rules are, and they understand how to flout those rules. That we know if we operate or do what we want to do after 6 o'clock, we know it's going to be all right. Nobody's going to come around. And so, for us, issues of sanitation, code enforcement, parking, those issues need to be issues that we are really addressing on a 24-hour basis. Issues like 311, we have to be able to have those things available on a 24-hour basis. I think that clears up most of the issues, because oftentimes when you call, anybody ever try to call after hours and you just get nobody?
Yes.
Now, we'll call you back on Monday and we're real nice about it. But, hey, how you doing? You called us? How can we help you? It was Saturday. Oh, and it's still there? No. So I think, again, for us, I think that's really common sense. And so for us, it's about creating a government that is flexible enough to be able to deal with that. Again, we have police, we have fire, but really having government really set aside, understanding the nuances of how our city changes, and have somebody who can make a decision on spot. Your job is working. I'm working, and you don't have to call me out of my bed. I'm here. I'm already dealing with that. So again, that for us is a very significant seismic shift in our government and our way of thinking, but it makes sense following the data of how our city has morphed and changed. So expect to hear me really push that type of government. So it will probably end up being something a lot more nuanced initially, to try to get something that fits, and then really seeing it take on as a permanent, I think it's not going to really change. So in that, you'll see some of the issues of enforcement that you really deserve to see, and people whose job is to see stuff. So hopefully, if we have people on the ground, you shouldn't have to call, because we've already seen it. We've already ticketed it, we've already moved it, we've already told it. Now keep in mind that, new room, sweep, clean, right? And so, whatever we catch is what we catch. And so, we have people who have enjoyed the fact that we don't enforce on weekends. And so, but that's our goal. But my goal is to really be able to create that, which helps with the livability issues that are happening. So then the third issue I wanted to talk about, and I'll take questions, deals with STDRs. I just heard the moans. Now, you won't believe this. You won't believe this. But believe it or not, Savannah actually has probably one of the most robust short-term vacation rental policies in the nation. Seriously, no, seriously. 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 All right. I'm not going to lie to you. We do. As a matter of fact, people come because it's so difficult to manage. It is so difficult to manage. And it is something that is evolving. We've had people on council that we should just have everywhere. And so it is a very difficult thing for us. I know that we just recently purchased software to help us be a lot more aggressive and effective and to be able to identify illegal ones. And I think we have to really deal with the illegal ones first. The second thing I think we have to do is to really be more aggressive in dealing with people who are rogue and dealing in a rogue way. That being said, I think the other challenge for us is really the law as it relates to this. And you may not like this. You may not like this. But Georgia is a very strong property rights state. And what we have been trying to address and fight, playing offense and defense at the same time as this. And again, for me, I'm not necessarily a big fan of short-term vacation rentals. I think that they destroy neighborhoods. You want to have neighbors. You don't want to have different neighbors every week. So, let me be very clear about that. And when you talk about issues of affordable housing, you can't have housing or issues of housing if you have a bunch of short-term hotels, really what they are. But in Georgia, we have really danced a very fine line between our ordinance and preemption by the state. Any of y'all familiar with Ubers, Lyfts? So we were getting ready to regulate it when it first came out, and the state just preempted us, and we just couldn't deal with it. And we don't want the state to do that as well. It just basically said we can't regulate it at all. That's not good for us. So we've had some really challenging situations in which we've had to put a legal test and an administrative test on, because it's hard to be able to regulate presence. And that's been, it pulls my little bit of hair out to be about how do you regulate somebody that is 50% in one place and 50% in another place, how you regulate. Because we have some people, and some of y'all might be in here, who literally live in Savannah 6 months out of the year. And some of you live somewhere else 6 months out of the year. And you clearly do that. And you clearly are registered to vote here. You clearly have your driver's license here. You clearly have those things that are here. I think there are 5 different options. And so we really looked at ways of how we address that, maybe through federal tax returns and those things. But the concern has always been, and it still is, that the moment we open up the STDR policy in any significant way, that we are going to be subject to a legal challenge, which will result in preemption. And again, for us, preemption is really the devil, because then it can be very well that we can't regulate it at all. And for us, we just think that we can regulate what's happening in Savannah better than people in Atlanta, who don't really understand the effect that it has in our community. So, for us, let's try to be more aggressive and dedicate more staff and more resources and more time and more technology to be able to address the rogue actors, and then make sure we have a compliance factor to make sure people are doing what they say they're doing, and then looking at other ways, maybe a 6th way of being able to ensure that people are following the rules. And so that's something that is very important to me to be able to do. I don't like people who don't follow rules. And so how do we do that in a way that really makes sense? So I think those are the 3 major things. I will tell you, for us, it's still about balancing what we have and what we want. We recognize Savannah as a huge tourist city, and we embrace that. It helps us do some of the things we want to do. We were able, after 7 years, to finally get the hotel tax passed, which was important to us because we think that people who don't live in Savannah should help pay for the stuff we need. And so the 2% extra in motel tax is going to pay for River Street to be fixed, which is very important to us, because otherwise we would have to pay for it. And so River Street is, I think, one of the jewels about downtown. It was okay until Plant Riverside picks up their side and Eastern Walk picks up their side, and all of a sudden she's really showing her age. So it's going to be a significant change as it relates to that. And so we're looking at that. Some of you might remember we used to have the Rock and Roll Marathon here, and we stopped it. I stopped, and partly because it stopped being what it started out being. There was a change in ownership, and the folks who used to come and work with us and talk to us and see how we can help, how we can be a part, how we can be helpful, how can we give back. We gave back to, we're running through your city like it, and so we took a very big risk and just said, nah, we're good. Let's talk, let's date again, and then let's see how it works out. And they were like, well, fine, we're done. We don't want to be bothered with you. And so we broke up. I'm expecting, and we're having conversations, we'll probably be having another marathon soon that is probably a lot smaller, a lot more mission driven, and a lot friendly. People want to come to Savannah and have those things. And so, again, as long as it complements what we're doing here and not being disruptive, 22,000 people running through your city is really a pretty big deal. And so again, for us, moderation is really key. So that's been very important for us. Another big decision we're gonna have to decide, and I'm asking council very early on in January, we're gonna decide what we're gonna do with the Civic Center. We gotta decide. And I have my own thoughts about it. I want to save the Johnny Mercer Theater. And I want to make that clear. All right, I understand. I understand y'all can say boo all you want to, and I understand it. And I still love you. But I also realize that Savannah does not have any other venue other than a 400-seat cultural arts theater
Yes.
and a 10,000-seat arena.
Yes.
And so if you don't have something in between the two, then we are at the mercy of the Lucas and the trustees that we don't control.
Mhm.
So we have a beautiful theater. She has seen a little bit of everything happening in there. I think we could put the work into it to renovate it. I think that we can do that. I think on the same side, I think that the current arena needs to come down. She's lived her useful life. She's really more expensive to fix. I think that we can restore part of the Oglethorpe grid there. And I believe that we can also do some variety of some mix of housing and office space there. I think we can do all of that. Now, how we do it, that's something we have to ask a professional to come up with, see if the plan works. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, then we do something else. Again, these are strictly my thoughts as it relates to that. But I do know that if we don't have an intermediate between a 400-seat and a 10,000 seat, then we have an issue.
Mhm.
We just have an issue. And we need this, it's either 400 seat or how many, this, or we don't even own this. We need to have some type of medium role for that. Again, I think they can be configured. I think the entrances, all that stuff can be changed. But I think that we have something that can be fixed, can be upgraded, can be restored in a way that we can really achieve the things that we want to achieve by still being able to restore some of our plan square back. So that's my thought about that. So that's all I gotta say. And I'll go ahead and entertain y'all's questions.
But there's a disparity. Some cities have given property tax relief to convert from short-term to long-term rentals. There are plans and other incentives that cities have done.
Again, not necessarily in Georgia. So I think, again.
Well, let me finish. You're right. Every year, Airbnb introduces legislation at the Georgia State Legislature to restrict local governments from implementing any kind of ordinance to control that. They've been successful in Florida, they've been successful in Arizona and several other states where they lose it, and all communities are gone.
Right.
And now the private equity firms are coming into Savannah, already buying these properties. They kicked out one of our members in the Beach Institute and made it an STVR. And they're doing the same thing in Florida, buying homes, some of the big private equity firms. So you're right, we've always worked with our legislature, and that's who you're replacing tonight. You're right, they were supposed to be here until the governor called a special session tomorrow.
Oh,
So the
okay.
same legislators
They never told me who it was that couldn't make it.
here. We have gotten confirmations from all of our area state reps and senators to be here tonight.
So I'm replacing like 8 of them? That's why all y'all are here, okay. Well, and it's true. Every year we're playing defense at the state to prevent that. They have a very strong lobby. And again, you have people in Atlanta who don't live here, don't see the effects of what they do. And you have places like Airbnb who make very convincing arguments. We know that we need about 10,000 units of housing a year. And that's at all levels. When we say affordable, really in Savannah, we use the definition of affordable for you. Because affordable for me is not affordable for you. Or affordable for you is not necessarily affordable for me. So we know that housing begets housing because people are able to move where they are. We know that low-income housing is different, is a very specific thing. It's managed generally through HUD, through our housing authority, which is a whole totally different thing. But we know that what we do is we need housing for people who want to live here, not people who want to visit here. And that's been what our challenge has been. I get phone calls, I'm sure many of you all do. Hey, man, how you doing? Good, who's this? You want to sell your house? How you get my number? I mean, they call you, they text you, and starting in January, there's a state law now that you have to be in real estate. You have to be a real estate agent in Georgia in order to be able to make those phone calls. But, you know, to me, that's the type of thing. They're saying, well, we'll make you a cash offer. And so at one point, no, I'm not interested, no, I'm not interested. Then I started saying, no, I'll take $2 million for my house. You can take everything in it, clothes, everything. $2 million. But this is the challenge that we have. And for me, STVRs, although they provide a purpose, they don't contribute to livable communities.
Right.
And so they just don't. And so understanding that, and that being your basis of understanding, then let's try to add the things that make it livable and not visitable. And so, you know, we have enough hotels. You want to stay in a hotel, stay in a hotel. And you're going to pay $2 more than you paid before because of the hotel tax. So, you know, we're continuing to fight that again. My biggest fear, and I'm always waiting during the session for them to call because we're in fear that, you know, that some of this Airbnb type of legislation might gain traction. And if it does, and we're able, they say, well, now it's no limits. A place like Savannah is in dire trouble because they will just buy out, and many folks, and I've known people where, you know, an equity firm buys a house and says, guess what, you either pay $500 more a month or you gotta get out. And I mean, I don't think any of us really have that ability to really put that type of money onto it. So it remains a challenge for us, but I think we're able to make sure that once, instead of 3,000, I'd be very interested in how many of those actually leave.
It's
And
actually
again-
10. It's actually 10. If you combine Airbnb and VRBO,
Right.
it's 10,000.
So for us, again, part of it is, let's make sure we get the illegal actors out.
Yes.
And so how do we need to dedicate the staff and dedicate that for the compliance side of that. And we're able, and again, the software we have will help us to be able to identify them and to be able to address them. So let's get those off the table first, and then let's deal with the ones that are licensed and then make sure that they're doing the right thing and make it, that they want to do the wrong thing and it's not profitable for them to stay here.
The legal ones. But then it touches on what you talked about also on the interpretation or actual enforcement of the law, that like an owner occupied, they're supposed to be on site. And if the interpretation from the city attorney is they only have to be there for 5 minutes during the year, that counts as owner occupied.
Yeah.
And that's not the law.
Well, again, legally defined presence. All right, you know, are you in the bathroom? Are you in the front room? Are you here? And again, the concern is, and again, it's a very real concern for us. And so, do we open it to change it and then risk losing it? I mean, that's the problem. I mean, how do you deal with something that is as intricate and as delicate as that? I mean, you know, I'm gone for a month. I mean, is it still owner occupied? So again, I think that hopefully our aggressive nature is once we get the first part of that puzzle out of the way, and we now have resources dealing with those actors, the ones that are not legit, that we'll be able to deal with. You gotta think another way. There are 5 ways. I think the 6th way is being able to look at federal income tax returns, which might help us to really be able to dwindle that number down.
Verify they live here, right?
Yes.
The ambassadors that we used to have downtown, is there a plan on bringing them back maybe with a little bit more authority than they had before?
Enforcement and things like that. Many members in the audience here have had issues at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and been
They call
told
me.
we don't work. So, I mean, how, and we don't have the staffing for that, or we're not allowed to make people work past 5 p.m. And how do we change that? How do we get the staffing where it needs to be 24 hours?
We have a 24-hour city. And so therefore, the charge to the manager is we're managing a 24-hour city. So you do a couple of things. Either you're able to allocate staff to work it. We hire staff to work it. Because there's some folks, you know what, I like working at night. And so guess what? Your job is, you know, Thursday to Tuesday, and you're working just all night. That's what you do all night. So I mean, you know, hospitals do it. You have night shift, you have pay differentials. There are a variety of ways to be able to get that done. We have to get ourselves out of the mindset that we are an 8 to 5 city. And that's been our problem. There is clearly a different reality out there. And if we're going to be the city that I'm hoping that we continue to be innovative, relying on data. The data clearly suggests that we are in need of 24-hour enforcement, or at least much more enforcement than we have now. And again, I don't want y'all calling me. I'd rather somebody be on the street.
It was SCAD about a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes and things. Are those discussions still going on? There's Ralston College, which is also buying a property downtown, taking it off the tax rolls.
I think
and open up
they
property.
owe taxes, pay taxes on most of their properties.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, and we asked them about their property. They actually are co-opting in other buildings that are paying taxes.
Right, they're renting from other,
Right,
like the
right.
property on Gaston and Drake.
Yes. So, the SCAD issue. Any more wine left? So, the views expressed in mine. I think that the Savannah College Bar design has been an absolute blessing for this community. There are some of you who may not have been here or may not have remembered downtown Savannah before SCAD. It was a much different place. All right. And so SCAD has helped Savannah become a destination and all of that. Savannah's grown because of SCAD, and they certainly add to our vitality and to our quality of life. However, and it's a big however, as SCAD has grown, their reliance on municipal services has also grown. They pay about $3 million taxes a year on properties. They can only not pay taxes on stuff that's not used toward the educational purpose, stuff that's used toward the educational purpose. So, if it's a school building, it's fine. If it's stuff under construction, they pay taxes on it. So the thought that SCAD pays no taxes is not true. They do pay taxes on some stuff, certainly not as much as they would pay. And so some of you remember our attempt to be able to create a fire tax. Remember the fire fee? The purpose of the fire fee was really for one reason, for SCAD. That was it. And so what ended up happening was a bunch of people got caught up in that. And then, churches were going to have to pay those fees, and people were paying double and triple and all of that. So yeah, we've had some conversations with SCAD. We continue those conversations with SCAD. You will hear an elevated argument why they should. The reality is as they continue to grow, there is a continued reliance on city and municipal services. They have a building now next to the bridge that's really nice and pretty and really tall. We have to have apparatus to have fire to go up in there. And we have to be able to address the different things that happen as a result of their business activities. And so my expectation is that they will, and they'll do it in a way that makes sense to us. Again, it could be a payment, it could be buying us fire trucks, it could be buying us police cars. I mean, something to take that amount of money off of our roles and off of our responsibilities. So that is certainly on my plate, and I intend to elevate that on.
You have to leave for another event. A lot of effort was put into a Forsyth Park master plan a few years ago from various community groups. As the city reviewed the plan, I know the city wasn't part of that. These were recommendations made by various community groups affiliated or nearby to Forsyth Park. Do you see the city endorsing any part of that or doing any kind of?
Right now, we're doing actually renovations on the basketball courts now. It started. You remember that? Yeah. It started today, I think. Yeah, and the park will be closed until February. And so, we're excited about that. There were some parts of the plan that were really very pie in the sky. There were some things I think were really workable. I think you have to be able to have some better restroom facilities or something somewhere around Forsyth Park. I think that creates an issue. So I think that you'll see aspects of the plan implemented. Some I think desire some more work. I think the general consensus of what I felt was people really liked the fact of really open space in Forsyth. And so we want to be able to embrace that. We also recognize that that little sidewalk is too small for people to walk and ride bikes and roller skate and motor scooter on. So we have to come up with a way of people being able to traverse it in a way that they don't get hurt. And so I think some of those things are public safety. We've dealt with some ways of dealing with the Whitaker and the Drake Street raceways and be able to calm that traffic because again, we have a lot more pedestrian traffic in those areas. I think that Forsyth Park is a jewel. I think that I think ultimately maybe on the, that'd be the southwest end, you might see some type of bathrooms. There's a new development on the other side of the street that might help us provide for some parking in the area. And I think we should put a pickleball court over there, because a lot of people say, and if we build it, we all come and play. I'm like, we can just play pickleball on the tennis ball court. They're like, no, you can't. You have to have a pickleball court. So, it seems really popular. So, again, for us, it's an evolving thing. But, I think Forsyth Park, plays a very significant central role in our community. It kind of went away. They do a variety of things. And for me, I envision them doing. First of all, they're huge wayfinders. Young people must get hit looking at their phones crossing the streets. There are also extra eyes on the street, which is important for us for law enforcement purposes. There are extra eyes. They, for us, can do CPR, which is important for people having medical emergencies. It is good to be able to build relationships with people who see things that don't necessarily look right. So I'm a fan of the ambassadors program. I was sorry it went away, and my goal is to be able to bring that back. And bring it back and expand it. I think that it's something that can work in all areas of the city, all having slightly different roles. But again, we would have to reconfigure how this is done. But I think the hotel motel tax can help us to be able to address some of that.
I'll get to you in a minute, Ken.
Looking online, we see that there was lots of input, but no results. So where does that stand now? I know you're expecting big money from grants for the big projects, but what about all the rest? The bicycle trails in the city, sidewalks, road repair. 2027 isn't that far off. So other than the biggies, what else do you have in mind to help us get those numbers down to zero?
So Vision Zero, as many of you are familiar with, was our effort to really get to the point of having zero traffic there. Very effective. Nick Colombo was a champion of that. New Jersey was a Newark, Camden.
It was Hoboken.
Hoboken. Right. They went, drastically down. For Savannah, it's really about retrofitting a lot of our places. First of all, it's about lighting, it's about signage, it's about being able to calm traffic. And so it's a variety of things. There was a bunch of recommendations, and for us, it's just a matter of time to get it done. The city council has already adopted the resolution, and fortunately, because you returned the vast majority of your city council, that remains on our.
I promised Mayor he'll be out here by 7, so our last question here.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
I was told I have to ask a question, not make a speech, unfortunately. So which of the three will be your next achievement? A, defeat Buddy Carter and become our congressman? B, actually get SCAD to pay their fair share? Or 3, get the bicycles off the sidewalks? And the squares. And the squares.
All right. So.
Mr. Mayor.
So.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Pull up. Well, I think that the easiest one is really for us to deal with bicycles. I'm sorry. Y'all asked me, right? So, for us, and we've had this conversation before, it's really about enforcement.
Yes.
It's about enforcement.
Yes.
And so, I'm not necessarily one for creating new rules. We have to enforce the ones we have. And if we have them,
Yes.
if they're on the books, they're on the books for a reason. If they don't need to be on the books, then we repeal them.
Right.
And so, again, I've walked around Forsyth Park where I almost got hit by a kid riding by on a bike. You need to be where you are, which is why I go back to the Forsyth Park thing. Then maybe there needs to be some type of dedicated bike lane so that you're not really impeding on that. Again, for us in Savannah, we have really acted and believed, again, that we could really coexist. But the fact is we've grown to the point where now we can. And so we have to be able to create those ways of creating rules. I know people don't like rules, but the reality is that rules be able to help people. And so when a couple of people are ticketed, then all of a sudden behavior changes.
Yes.
You know, we pick up litter every single day.
We've been saying.
People say, it's so dirty, it's dirty. What are you going to do about it? I pick up litter. But I mean, it doesn't change until behavior changes. And so when all of a sudden somebody gets a ticket for littering, they have to go to court,
Yes.
all of a sudden behavior changes. And so for us is really, and I've really tried in terms of this administration, really be transformative and being able to challenge some of those norms. I think, you know, again, SCAD should pay, you know, we should be able to come to some, again, they don't have to. They don't have to. They should want to. And so that is the position. So, you know, there are people, you should go and demand it. Well, I mean, you go demand it all day long. But I mean, I think just like we were able to do with the ports, which I'm very proud of, is that the ports were even further away than SCAD. But we were able to say, hey, you're really a part of this community. And so help us to be able to help you. And so hence we were able to get $6 million over 8 years to provide $750,000 a year for people in West Side community to be able to stay in their homes. And so if we can do it with the Ports Authority, which is the state, then we can do it with SCAD. And so there, you know, there's a time for diplomacy, and there's a time for me just yelling on the corner. You know, what is he yelling about? Well, that's what I'm yelling about. And so I think that they should. I've said it. You know, again, I think they're value community partners, but they have to be value community partners all the way around. And so we love having them here. We just want them to help us fund, like we all do, the cost of our government, create and make our community better. We just want them to help us. I'll take one more question. I'm bold. I got this sparkling water. I'm good. Anybody got any more sparkling water? And that's you know, it's been the greatest, really, honor of my life. This is my 20th year. I'm finishing my 20th year in elected office here in the city. I started with hair. I don't have it anymore for good reason. But I really have learned to grow, and obviously 4 years ago, this community took a chance on me and elected me as mayor. And I will be forever grateful. Likewise, this community took another chance and said, we'll give them 4 more years. By law, I'm done. This is it. My term will be over in 4 years, and I start the countdown on January 1st. And my expectation will be that 4 years from now, you will say that our community is a much better place. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for doing what you said you were going to do. Now, what does that mean? That means I'm gonna make a bunch of people mad. We just are. But you have to be able, and again, I think that we can coexist. It doesn't have to be or. It can be and. But it has to be in a way that complements each other and not one that overtakes the other. Okay? Many of you, for you, what you have done, and this represents your investment in this community. You've done like I've done. You've come here, you put your stake here, and say, I want to be in Savannah. And that should mean something. It should mean something. And so for us, how do we make the most of that experience? I know I'm surprised the question didn't come with Jason. The question didn't come about overlays and hotels and all that. I'm really surprised. I'm really a little bit disappointed because I just knew that it was going to come. I'm expecting that should happen, you know, first of all, when it comes to us. You know, we have to be able to say enough is enough.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, and it's okay. And, you know, for the ones that are there, you know, live, be merry. But you can't have the encroachment to the point where it changes the quality of life when people put their stake here and want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will hear me say those things very publicly and have these very courageous conversations with people sometimes who don't want to hear it. Now, to that end, that also means that we have to change our thinking as well. and be able to say it can't be no, it has to be some. But again, in a way that's workable, and then create a mechanism in which we don't wait till it gets out of control to be able to say it's gone too far. No, we should be talking all of the time. And again, not just tourism and residents, everybody about livability and what that means to us. So expect very soon in January for me to start raising that argument about creating that task force with a very specific time period and very specific goal. And to really look at how we want Savannah to be. One thing about it is it cannot remain, it's not sustainable for the residents. And so Savannah will be, and this is one preview of my inauguration speech, Savannah will be a livable city for all. You've seen us do things with housing, you've seen us do things with homeless. We are investing like we've never invested before. We're serious about it. But we want to be able to protect investment from the river all the way to 204 and I-95. Because again, what makes Savannah the best city on earth is that we are a city of people. And that's what makes
I want to just publicly acknowledge Nancy Radke, who
Yeah.
did. For those that know, Nancy went to 4 or 5 different websites and counted scheduled tours of 31,073 tours that we have scheduled in the city. Reality, there's over 40-some thousand. Now she's looking at the number of walking tours. And in a month, we have almost 3,500 scheduled walking tours in a 30-day period. It's just amazing what's going on in 2 Mile Square. It's just
our conversation starts with the data. And so we're not dismissing that. You start with the data. Now, with the data, where do we move from here? And so for those of you in the scientific process, you identify the problem.
And